Over the years, I've found myself drawn into a more slow pace of living as our world becomes ever increasingly more smart. And no, it's not just because I romanticize the past, though I will admit I do that somewhat. But for me, it's because the pace of modern life feels relentless. Every app and almost everything is vying for your attention, and every device claims to help optimize your life. But somewhere in all that noise, I felt that living the life I actually wanted for myself was getting left behind. So over the years, I've been making small transitions, living with less technology and more intention, slowing down. And what I've found is that slowing down doesn't have to mean doing less, but it means doing more of what really matters. Before I go any further though, if you don't know me, I'm Spencer, and I like to talk about simple living, frugality, and digital minimalism. Today I want to talk about what slow living means to me, why I've chosen to take a low-tech approach in that slow lifestyle, and what it has done for me in my day-to-day life. First off, I just want to talk a little bit about the problem that I see with the high-tech way of life that we're living now. We have the most high-tech tools we've ever had, but people are among the busiest that they've ever been as well. Our time hasn't been freed up by these tools, and we find ourselves overstressed, overburdened, and depressed. And the research really seems to bear this out as well. We're seeing that the more time people spend online, the more negative their mental health outcomes, and this is alarmingly affecting young people more than others. Indeed, it's the people who grew up with these technologies, the ones who were steeped in them from a very young age, who are the most impacted by the negative outcomes. Algorithmic manipulation is another thing. All of the platforms that we use for our entertainment, be it social media or even things like YouTube, they utilize algorithms to feed us our content, and we end up getting pigeonholed into very specific silos. Now, I know we all have experience going down the YouTube recommendation rabbit hole. We're often ending up in a place that was very different from where we started. Oftentimes, because much of the profit on the internet is made through advertising revenue, eyes on content is the most valuable thing. This leads tech companies to utilize algorithms to keep you engaged, and the best way to do that is to get you enraged. This is why oftentimes you'll see content that challenges you and things that make you upset, things that are most likely to get you to stay with the content and engage with it. Other times, algorithms or notifications will be used to show you good things, things that will draw you in and get you to stay with that device or that software for longer. But the important thing to note is that tech addiction is by design. It is a feature and not a bug. Many times people have left comments on my videos telling me that you just need to exercise more willpower. You can utilize these devices and not have them use you whatsoever, getting only benefits and leaving all the costs behind. What this ignores is that many things in the smart world are intentionally designed to be addictive because the profit motive is at the center of their existence. And you may think that you are in control, that you're the rare person who can get in and get out unscathed, but we have to reckon with the fact that these technologies were designed with the idea to control us, manipulating our behaviors and getting us to do the things that these companies want, which is usually buy. That is the design. So prior to taking this slower path that I've been on for the last few years, I was just a normal younger person living this high-tech lifestyle and being manipulated by algorithms. I didn't exactly know what it was at the time. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it felt like I was just overeating on junk food. I didn't feel good. I was feeling that immediate hit of dopamine in the moment, but after the fact, I usually felt like junk. During 2020 especially, I think a lot of us were spending our time online. More and more of the world moved online during that time, and I think we started to really get exhausted from it. And that's kind of where the low-tech lifestyle began for me. I began thinking about when I was younger, when I didn't have this stressed out feeling, like I had to be on at all times, and like the whole world was connected to me at my fingertips every second of the day. And for me, that started with bristling and turning away from the smart tools that we have all come to use in our daily lives. At first, it just started with leaving my phone behind when I would go out to the store. I started coming to this point where I realized we don't need to have this thing with us at all times, even though it has become the norm to do so. And pretty soon, the fun part started to follow as well, experimenting with retro technologies, oftentimes nostalgic items that I grew up with, or even things from before that time. Things like shooting on a film camera and being forced to only have 36 exposures really made me slow down. I wasn't going to take photos of every moment of my life like people often do with their phones. Switching to an analog paper notebook and pen allowed me to write down my ideas without any distraction from notifications coming in. And eventually that meant trying out other retro technologies, things like the iPod, or even just going back to reading a physical newspaper again. Now, I just want to take a pause and say that I'm not trying to be a luddite here. I am not anti-technology. In fact, I'm shooting on a very high-tech camera right now. I just wanted to use my technology intentionally and not just go along with every new innovation that came up. I think oftentimes what happens is that we accept new technologies that come along as a mark of progress and we use them without question. I like to take an approach more close to the Amish community, and I know that doesn't help me look like any less of a luddite, but what that means is I like to take an evaluative stance toward my technology. You know, the Amish look at technology and evaluate each new piece of technology that comes about by asking, will this hurt or help their community? For example, many Amish communities have things like phones or even a shared vehicle. These tools can be used by the community in ways that benefit that community at large, taking trips out of the community for supplies as a group, things like that. However, things like personal vehicles for each family or cell phones for each individual are usually barred from communities. The thought behind this being that these tools are going to isolate that individual from the community and not lead to further cohesion. Another example I can think of in my life is I like to use an Alphasmart to do offline writing that I can then upload to my computer and use digitally. I did a whole video on that device, and if you want to see more, I've linked that above. What the Alphasmart was, though, was basically an educational aid that was used in the 90s to help kids learn typing skills before computer labs were widespread. At the time, it seemed like a pretty high-tech tool, but nowadays it is used for a distraction-free writing aid for people who want to do their writing and not have to worry about notifications or the possibilities that a computer offers. I do have a laptop computer that I use for work, but I like to keep that in a desktop configuration as much as I can. Keep that fixed to a place so that I have to go to that place to use that technology. When I want to do some writing and some creative work and I know that I want to use that stuff digitally later, I bring something like the Alphasmart, which allows me to do my writing on the go, but I'm not distracted by all of the things that the computer has. And most of these tools are not expensive. I got them for always less than $50, oftentimes free, and they allow me to do things with them to give myself a little bit more peace in the day-to-day and focus on the work that really matters to me. And I guess that leads me to talking now about the benefits, the great things that I have found about choosing this slower, low-tech lifestyle. For me, I separate that into two different categories. The first being clarity of focus. Since moving into this slower, low-tech lifestyle, I find that I have a better attention span. I find that I'm less and less distracted, and I'm more and more able to get into a deeper flow state and get to work. Whereas before, I was much more easily distracted. I could easily be pulled off of a task if my phone buzzed or if I just had the inkling to pick it up and look at something. Nowadays, trying to live this slower, low-tech lifestyle, I find myself thinking a little bit more deeply, and I'm able to just have that stillness of mind where I can think clearly about the things that I actually want to do, and I can go out and do them. I think as the smart world continues to offer us more and more ability to access things whenever we want, it's important for us to cultivate discipline more and more. And to me, that discipline doesn't come from walking into the casino when you have a gambling problem and doing your best not to sit down at a slot machine, but it comes from choosing to not go in that building whatsoever. And in my case, that doesn't mean abstaining from smart tools altogether. It means subbing in these single purpose items that can take a load off my mind and allow me to focus better, so I'm able to use those smart tools for their tools, for the purposes that are actually a tool, and use them less and less for distracting and entertaining myself. The second thing that I've really found from this is a sense of freedom and of resilience by not needing these tools for every single solution in my day-to-day life. Knowing that I am not at the beck and call of these tools and that they're not going to grab my attention whenever they want. I don't want it to be a situation where the tail is wagging the dog. Yes, these tools can assist you in very specific contexts, and that's what I've done in my own life. But I don't want to come to a point where I rely on them for everything because that limits my freedom. And by using these tools in almost every situation in our lives, by having them so enmeshed in almost every aspect of our day-to-day, we are giving companies more and more control over that. By slowing down and using lower tech items, I find myself less influenced by those companies. As a result, I'm scrolling much less, I'm buying much less, and I'm happier. The resilience part comes from the fact that I am more insulated from the ebbs and flows of the smart world and the net. A few years ago, the service provider that I got my cell phone and internet from, Rogers, had a complete blackout nationwide in Canada. This was at a time when I was just getting into a low-tech lifestyle. It was actually the first day that I bought a paper map, because it was then that I no longer had access to data, so therefore maps and GPS, that I realized that I didn't even know where I was going without my phone leading the way. And in those years since that blackout, when I really realized how little control I had over my day to day, I started taking things back by living that slower, low tech lifestyle. And I can tell you that my smartphone no longer holds the leash like it used to. I will make separate videos on these topics most likely, but if you want to get into a low tech lifestyle yourself, I like to live and breathe this ethic. One book that I'm just rereading right now is Walden by Thoreau. Now, if you want really the manifesto for simple living and slow living, pick this book up. A more modern recommendation is Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. If you want to get up to speed on the digital minimalism movement, this is the seminal text for that. You're going to find the Amish example that I mentioned, as well as a prescription to actually starting a slow digital minimalism life. Another book that I really love and recommend is One Man's Wilderness by Dick Proenneke. Now, Mr. Proenneke, he was a diesel mechanic, I believe, maybe for the Navy, something like that. Upon retirement at the early age of around 50, he bought a piece of land up in Alaska and he moved up there and built a cabin and lived there for the next 30 years. This guy lives an extremely low-tech life. He built this cabin by hand, I believe with hand tools. He did a lot of wildlife photography, a little bit of fishing, and a lot of writing. This book is all of his journals compiled and it is really, really good. Finally, I just want to say, if you're feeling burnt out and overstimulated by this smart world and you want to try living a slow, low-tech lifestyle, give it a try. And no, you don't have to go from Neuralink to Walden overnight. This can just be small changes over time and you can make big changes in your life that way. A couple things that I recommend is just trying to implement a low-tech morning or evening routine. Personally, I like to go the first and last hour of the day with no screens. This helps you wake up slowly. You're not instantly hitting yourself with tons of stimulus, and it helps you wind down for bed as well and sleep better. You can also try a full day or weekend away from social media. Just taking a break from the overstimulation and the FOMO of those platforms can be really enlightening to how much of an impact they have on you. One of my favorite things that I like to recommend is just take one smart tool in your life and replace it with an analog one. Just do that as a test. This could literally be just as simple as taking physical notes with a pen and paper instead of doing it on your phone. Swapping in some of these analog alternatives do more than giving you a peace of mind, but they also give you less and less reliant on the smart world, which is oftentimes out to make money off of you. Ultimately, you don't have to go back to the Stone Age or become an Amish person or live a true off-grid lifestyle. You just need to identify what matters to you and cut the rest. And please remember that this is not a race and there is no finish line. Small steps can lead to very big changes over time. I have started my journey and I may be well on my way to a slow, low-tech lifestyle, but I am by no means finished, and I hope that you are just getting started. Thanks very much for watching, folks. I hope you found this video interesting. If there are any low-tech or slow-living things that you've been implementing in your day-to-day life, I would love to hear from you in the comments. I'll chat with you there. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.